Real nice letter from County EMS.
Have you been? Have you been there?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So we go every year.
Which place?
Marriott.
Yeah, I've been there. It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful beach.
Right on the water.
Yeah. Well, that'd be Okay, we'll call the Sylvania Township Board of Zoning Appeal hearing to order. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Halbert?
Yes.
Mr. Emch?
Here.
Mr. Hayes?
Yep.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Bullen?
Here.
Mr. Sable, alternate.
Here.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from March 5th meeting?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Halbert?
Abstain?
Mr. Emch?
Abstain.
Mr. Hayes?
Abstain.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Bullen?
Yes.
Mr. Sable?
Here.
Okay. For anybody who may be testifying today on any of the cases, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, please, if you think you may be speaking. If you don't speak, it's fine, but if there's any chance you're going to speak, please raise your right hand, because we're going to swear you in. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge? If it is, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll be going on to new business, old business, I apologize. We have old business first. We have a conditional use request to permit a landscape business in an A4 zoning district for a property located at 2922 Gradwell by David Killian, the property owner. And, Carol, can we get the staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant is seeking a conditional use permit to facilitate vehicle ingress to his landscape operation on an adjoining property. The current zoning is A4, single-family residential, 160-foot frontage on Gradwell Road, lot size is 1.1 acres. The adjacent zoning and adjacent uses are M1, landscaping business to the north, A4, single-family residential to the south and the east, Colony Oak subdivision is to the east, and to the west, M1, light industrial, Atlas paving. This case originally stems from a zoning complaint last fall from an area resident concerned about the sights and sounds of the trucks and trailers on the subject property. The applicant purchased this property and the one north of it in October 2011 in an auction of foreclosed properties. The property to the north, 2930 Gradwell Road, is zoned M1 and used by the applicant and his family for the operation of their landscape business. It is the intention of the applicant and family to also purchase 2940 Gradwell Road, north of the M1 property, and utilize those two properties, 2930 and 2940, for their landscape business. The property at 2940 is currently an undeveloped lot that was used commercially and contains multiple commercial vehicles, storage containers, etc. that haven't been moved in years. This property is zoned A4, excuse me, and as such is in violation of the zoning resolution and would also require a conditional use permit. The owner of this property and the applicants have not been able to reach an agreement for purchase at this time. The landscape business is operating solely from the property at 2930 Gradwell Road, which has approximately 80 feet of frontage and is 0.626 acres in size. A single-family dwelling and detached garage is on the front of the property and a large commercial garage with shop and office approximately in the center. The rear quarter of the property is an open area that is used for vehicle and trailer storage. The narrowness of this lot presents a logistical difficulty for the applicant's trucks entering and exiting the property and especially turning around on the rear portion of the property. The applicant wishes to use the subject property, 2922 Gradwell Road, for ingress to the business property via an L-shaped unpaved drive from Gradwell Road east to the rear of the property and north to the business property. The applicant intends to construct a privacy fence along abutting residential properties if this conditional use is approved. Staff recommends denial of this request. While there's commercial industrial activity on the other side of Gradwell Road, most of the large truck traffic enters and exits onto Central Avenue and has minimal impact on the residential area along Gradwell Road. Staff contends that the heavy trucks and other vehicles associated with the landscape business traversing the property will have a negative impact upon the peaceful enjoyment and property values of abutting residential properties. This officer understands the predicament the applicant finds himself in regarding to his business on the narrow property to the north. However, other options are available, such as purchasing the property at 2940 Gradwell Road or removing the existing small garage on the business property. Furthermore, applicant was aware of the size limitations and constraints of the business property when he purchased it at auction. Should the board approve the conditional use permit, staff makes the following recommendations. 1. Both landscape and solid privacy fencing shall be installed along the southern and eastern property lines abutting residential property to provide year-round visual screening for the purpose of effectively shielding the commercial use. Landscape shall consist of evergreen trees, a minimum of 4 feet tall at time of planting. Privacy fencing shall be 6 feet tall. The access drive shall be paved with asphalt or concrete, stone or gravel are not acceptable surfacing. Access drive shall be for ingress only, commercial vehicles only. Use of access drive by commercial vehicles shall be limited to set hours of operation as seen as appropriate by the board. No parking of commercial vehicles or trailers beyond what is normally permitted in a residential zone district shall be permitted on the subject property. No storage of equipment, materials related to the landscape business shall be permitted on the subject property. No landscape business operations, for example, mulching, composting, etc., shall be permitted on the subject property. No commercial signage shall be permitted on the subject property, and any lighting shall be residential in nature and shall be directed downward and not onto adjacent residential parcels.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions so far from the board? If not, we'll ask if there's anybody here to speak on the matter.
On your point number 4, use of access drive by commercial vehicles to set hours of operations as appropriate by the board. Are you talking about the zoning board of appeals?
Yes.
So if we were to decide that, we ought to set hours as well tonight?
Yes.
When you say no parking of commercial vehicles or trailers beyond what is normally permitted in a residential zone, could you be a little more specific, Tony?
Yeah, a residential property is permitted one commercial vehicle up to 12,000 pounds. Also permitted one single axle trailer.
That's my questions.
Okay. And access drive for ingress only? And
Yes.
how do they get out?
Out through 29,
Okay, so that is what you're envisioning.
29,
And it's
30,
circle
or-
around.
Be like a loop, yeah.
right. Let me go to that. Oops. It's a little difficult to see. The applicant gave us this one. There's a, right, this is Gradwell right here, and there's a drive. Right now, it's just basically a 2-track going back and then back here into the neighboring property where they have the business.
Whose property is that right there, Darrell?
Which one?
Looks like a house to the left right there.
This?
Yeah.
That's the subject property. That's 2922.
He uses this as residential property?
Yes, he lives there.
Do we have any idea how the property to the, am I getting that east? Do you have any idea how far that is?
To the
Is it-
east, which would be
not the
back
east,
here.
not the east, to be at the south.
Well, I believe they're here tonight, but,
Just curious from the, I mean, it looks like.
well, the frontage is 160 feet from here to here.
Okay,
It's relatively close.
is it? Okay. Any other questions?
Are there any zoning violations right now on the property?
No.
Probably down like 2940, you know,
Right.
it's not part of this.
So they wouldn't, on this actual piece that's before us, this is all about egress, they would not be operating, business is not operated on this piece.
Right, right. This is strictly for access to the business property.
How many vehicles will there be coming on the property during the day?
I would leave that to the applicant to answer that question.
If there are no other questions, can we have anybody here who's speak on behalf of the applicant, please ask you to come up to the podium and sign in and then state your name.
Good evening.
Can you freeze the slide?
My name is Mike Killian. I'm the father of the subject property that we're talking about. I was the person that purchased the property the night of the auction, and I'm here to discuss with this committee the staff recommendations and to ask for some variances in the staff's recommendations. The property was purchased at auction. Prior to that auction, we had discussions with the zoning board members of the Sylvania Township about possible relocation into the community, this business. And the recommendations at that time said, you need to look in this zone between King, Central, Centennial, the zone that we're currently located in, because that had the most flexibility as described by the Lucas County property zoning, saying a landscape business could operate within this community on that particular subject property. Okay? That was the start of the research to find a parcel. It also had a commercial property adjacent to it. And if you look at historically the use of that property, and you could see by looking at 2940 how it has been used, and I think the gentleman over here suggested that it might have some zoning violations, I would suggest that the property's probably had it for 10 plus years and prior to that. Because if you go to the zoning areas maps, you'll see trucks parked across all three parcels of land, not just the new parcel that we're talking about tonight, okay? The application came in to use the property for a landscape business. The definition of a landscape business, in my mind, goes beyond driving a truck onto the property. It would operate as a landscape business in conjunction with the commercial property adjacent to it. That was our intent, okay? Some of the information presented on the staff's report would suggest that the Atlas Paving Company, the M1 property directly across from it, it suggests here it does not use this road, it uses Central Avenue. The property only has one exit, and that is directly at the driveway of the subject property. Okay? So all of Atlas traffic comes through that same grab wall exit. So we're not increasing, we're using it as the commercial property adjacent directly across the street. Okay?
You say cross street, you're talking about west of your property.
Directly west. Okay? I think it's on your map there.
Yeah. That parking lot also has an exit on Central, doesn't it?
The parking lot is not Atlas Paving's business operation. Somebody else has those 20 semis that are parked out there every day, which is what I think he might be referring to as the exits to Central Avenue. But Atlas only has one driveway. I drove around the property. They have a fenced-in property, the M1, as described up above.
We're looking at this, maybe, this lot here, is this 2940 or is this 2930? I drove by the property. 2940 looked like it's,
Whose is that? His?
No, that's what he doesn't show.
2930 and 2922.
Whose stuff is this?
another property owner.
The same one I believe had all three, but now he just has this.
I'm sorry?
I think this one party had all three, and now he only has this. Which is where,
2940, I believe
The
is.
gentleman that owns 2940, owns 2930 and 29.
He owned all three parcels and operated a concrete masonry business, to my knowledge, because on 2940, the business still has equipment, trucks, trailers. But if I show you the Aries map, or you could go to it while we're here and look at the 2006 picture, all three parcels are covered with trucks. Okay? This isn't something new to that parcel of land. Secondly, there's some suggestions of some limitations to operate a landscape business, which is what the zoning appeal was requesting. You don't operate a landscape business with restricted hours, as we might end up discussing later on this evening. Generally, a landscape business in northern Ohio can do landscape for maybe 6 months of the year, and most likely is in the snow removal business the other 6 months of the year. The snow falls at its will, and the time of day that a truck goes to plow is not capable of being restricted to restricted hours that a landscape business might be involved in. Okay? The ingress and egress to a landscape business, requiring it to have a paved asphalt driveway, is inconsistent with the other vendors that operate landscape businesses within a quarter mile of this particular parcel of land. I can count 60 that are driveways in the neighborhood that are not asphalt or paved. Okay? So I'm not looking to spend and invest that kind of requirement for ingress and egress to a driveway. Commercial vehicles limited to the hours of operation, I've already talked about that. Parking of commercial vehicles on the property. A landscape business is which is what we're looking for the permit to provide. Those are contradictory statements in my mind. Storage of equipment for a landscape business is a contradictory statement of the subject property.
Excuse me, it almost sounds like you're asking for a rezoning of this property rather than...
I'm asking for the special use for a landscape operation, which is what the zoning permits me to ask for.
But
Is that true?
For a single-family resident?
Just to go back to your application, the one from February 5th, what you're really asking for is a conditional use so that you can use the entire property for a landscape business without any restrictions.
That was the intent the night of the purchase.
Okay, so how did we get from that, where you're asking us for that, to all of these conditions where we're talking about ingress and perhaps egress?
These were conditions put on after a visit by your staff.
Okay,
He is suggesting if you approve the conditional use of a landscape business, these would be the restrictions he would request. That's how I read this. Should the approved conditional use permit, the staff makes the following recommendations. Okay?
But under the system that we have, and we're constrained, is that we can grant a conditional use
Okay?
under certain, we can either grant the conditional use or we can grant it with certain conditions.
Okay?
And so I think that that's what you were hearing from the zoning office, that at least in their opinion, it wasn't that you were going to get a blanket conditional use for a landscape business so you could use it any way that you wanted.
Okay?
It would be that you would get the conditional use with certain restrictions, and so that's the reason why this came up on the...
Okay, the restrictions seem to be significantly different than maybe a business one block over in the same kind of business that we're in.
Well, let me ask you.
And so, therefore, it's playing at a level playing field is what I'm looking for.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you when you're making your presentation, but I want to know a little bit about this property and how it was used before. You're saying all three of these parcels were used as a landscape business?
If you have access to the internet, go to the Aries maps, look at 2006, and share with them that picture.
And how long was it? So all three parcels were used and
For 10 years, this property was owned by the 2940 individual, which is in the masonry business, to my understanding, okay? The property was foreclosed on him, the two houses that we're talking about, okay? The third parcel, 2940, he maintains ownership of it.
But when you purchased it, you bought a property, one parcel was
Commercial.
commercial, and this was not.
Correct.
Okay, so obviously you did go into this understanding you were going to need to do this.
Through the advice of the zoning folks of the township, a year or so back before we made the purchase, he suggested we look in this quadrant because it had the most flexibility and it had the zoning ability for a special use of a landscape business. Lucas County, all day long, that's the way we read it, that's the way we understood it on the day of purchase. Did you?
Okay,
Yes.
this is Central,
Correct.
this is Gradwell,
Yes.
this is not your property?
Nope. Nope. You're not, you're getting down to the,
Wait a minute.
okay. Nope.
All
No.
this is zone C?
Commercial.
Commercial. This piece of property?
Looks like it's a
It's
residential house.
I'm sorry?
It's a residential.
Who lives there?
I would put-
Okay, I don't care who lives
Yep.
there, but it's not you guys.
Correct.
Okay, this piece of property?
The gentleman that lives there used to operate the building that is the commercial property that we own. That was one of his businesses long ago, 2950.
Okay, so this is not your property?
No.
That's where all the trucks are?
No. Not my property.
Go down one more.
2940 is
all
where,
the trucks,
Okay,
or whatever.
okay, whose piece of property is this?
that's our commercial property.
Okay, and who,
That's my son David's residential property.
so we're talking about this parcel here?
No, we're talking
No,
about the one at the...
this is the one,
Talking about the large,
2922.
That sounds like you didn't want to have that rezoned.
that's a house, and that gentleman, I believe, is here in the crowd.
House here?
House there?
Yes.
Yes?
Okay, so you want to come in this property how?
Right where
This?
you, yep,
Out like that?
exactly.
Right.
Okay. Now, what's back here? Residential properties?
It's empty lots being developed.
It's the Colony Oaks subdivision, there's 2 or 3 lots that are undeveloped.
Okay, according to the picture, I didn't see any fencing along here, here, or here, but I think there was some up there.
There was put up by the foreclosing company there.
Okay. So this is the piece of property that we're talking about.
Correct. The two combined is the entire piece that we're discussing.
And this property owner is here.
I believe it's the gentleman back here. And he, to my knowledge, he's been there 10-plus years as the owner of that home.
I guess we should let you, we've been shooting a lot of questions, but if you
Yes.
wanted to finish your
I want to
presentation.
make sure we're all talking about the same parcel.
Right. Go ahead, please.
The landscape business cannot do anything on the property other than drive based on what the recommendation would be. No commercial signage, don't intend to have commercial signage. Lighting, don't intend to light this up as a commercial property. Intend to operate a landscape business similar to, and I don't think I need to go down the list of those that are in our neighborhood that are also operating trees, tree surgeries, landscape sales, all of those things within that particular quadrant.
When you say the quadrant, How close?
1/4, 1/2 mile.
Was that- I drove
It's
this,
not on that picture.
yeah, not on that picture.
Yep. And the other limitations of having the driveway ingress only, I don't know that most others are limited to a one-directional that have a driveway that is not their main driveway, which you can go up and down grab wall and verify.
Or would you suggest you would widen that drive for?
I would make it
two-way
one vehicle width, which it is today in dirt form as he suggested, a double track is his terms.
Okay.
But the property historically has always been a commercial property or abused by the owners in violation most potentially of some of your zoning codes. And you can see that on the 2940, which you're well aware of.
So can I ask, just on these recommendations, I'm hearing there are a number of these you have no issue with, and there's others you take issue. I wouldn't mind getting your feedback on those, and then we're going to let some other folks possibly talk. So what about fencing?
Today, there is a fence that separates the southern property, that the fence is currently owned, in my mind, by the property owner, and it is a split rail, chain link looking fence, not a privacy fence. It's to keep the dogs where they belong.
Okay.
On our side, we have put up a split rail fence to keep our dogs. Okay? Those are two split rail fences that divide the southern property.
And if this became utilized as a landscape business, what about installing a privacy fence?
Understand that request.
Okay. Access drive, would it be finished?
It would not be a paved asphalt or a concrete driveway. It would be a gravel, most likely asphalt millings,
Okay.
which create a base for a driveway,
That's what you're proposing.
purchased from our neighbor, Atlas Paving.
Okay. Do you have established hours now?
The established hours are in the summertime, 7:30, 8 o'clock, we're beginning to mobilize, which is typical. It's going to rain tomorrow, we're not mobilizing at 7:30. You mow until the day is done if it rained the day before. I think all of us have some understanding of how a business of that nature operates.
Okay. Well, number 5, no parking of commercial vehicles or trailers.
That's a significant limitation, but we can certainly discuss the impact of no vehicles being on the property.
And then 6, then no storage of equipment. You intend to utilize this parcel also for operating your business?
Today, not that big of an operation.
Right.
Probably only 4 or 5 trucks, 3 or 4 trailers. Okay? The potential exists, and we'd like it to. It's no more trailers than in the year 2006 that were parked on that property. If you look at the zoning, have you been able to accommodate that picture for them?
Yeah, I guess we didn't finish that. In the peak season, the hours would be 7:30 a.m. How late do you see yourself?
Tonight, would have been out there till 7 o'clock,
All right.
mowing.
Okay.
Typically, it's, an 8 to 5 kind of ideal for any
I
operation.
think I heard you right, in the winter when you're pushing snow, that could be a night long.
I have commercial businesses, and to name a few, the Better Business of Toledo, which is located here in the township on King Road, that's one of our clients. They expect that driveway to be clean before the BBB opens up for business. Do I do that at 8:30? Don't think so. Okay? We do work for the Village of Ottawa Hills, their main municipal building, no different than this building. What is their expectation? We're not doing their snow plowing, doing their grass and maintaining their property.
I don't know if Tom covered this, but for the third point with the ingress only, is that okay with you? Or would you like
I guess that's putting a big handcuff on opening the gate to drive in or out. I don't know that the other businesses on my neighborhood have that limitation, and I'm not looking for that particular limitive.
Could I make a comment? I'm listening to what you're saying. Board of Zoning Appeals, tonight, the board is going to make a decision to actually change the law for you on your property.
Okay.
You've been bringing up the adjacent property owners. The board at least should not consider any adjacent property. It has nothing to do with this. If they're doing it, it doesn't matter. You're here to ask about this property and this property only. What they do next door or down the street should have no basis at all. You can even bring it up, because it shouldn't matter. And the recommendations that you have on here, you just make these up, or just come out of the zoning book?
A lot of these items are code requirements as far as the hard surfacing of the drive, the ability to set hours of operation.
If the business at present has been running in violation to the zoning code for 20 years, you come here tonight and ask basically to leave it as it is. Give us what we're asking for and let us continue to go against the zoning code. This is the time to make an adjustment on that and to correct any problems. That's why I asked about any violations.
Okay.
If there were violations on the property, what's the point in allowing something, changing the rules just for you if there's violations? That's why I asked the question.
Good question. Thank you.
If these are in compliance with the zoning resolution, you're saying we should eliminate what the requirements are and allow you to do this on the property because other people are doing it. You see where the issue is?
So
And
would it be fair to me?
if the recommendations are based on the zoning code, if you came in here and said, I want to put a landscape business on this property, these would be the requirements.
Those are the recommendations or the requirements? And I
These
think I'm
are
trying to interpret his
recommendations from the
statement.
staff, and this board has to make a decision.
Okay.
Are they going to base it on the zoning resolution? Or are they going to base it on what the zoning book says?
Okay.
Well, to clarify, the staff is giving us recommendations,
Sure.
but I think what Mr. Sabo is saying, the basis of those are the code. So
Okay.
they can only recommend, but, in terms of our leeway to change, it is, as Mr. Sabo is saying, they are code related.
And so, as I was saying before, that we have the ability to issue a conditional use, but we can do it either a blanket or with certain restrictions or conditions. And so that's the reason why we're going through this exercise, because we've had the input from the zoning office, and now we want to hear from you on these conditions as well. And so far, you've let us know what you like and what you dislike with these. So it will just help us as we consider this matter. So do you want to go through the last three?
Yeah, I thought I had, but
Okay.
no, just so on the record, I think, number 7, I think he would prefer not to have that restriction.
Correct.
And I believe he had no problem with 8 or 9.
No signage is not
and
an
no-
issue today, and lighting of that particular zone is not an issue today. There are sodium lights on the commercial buildings, which have been there for as long as I know.
Okay. Now, does anyone have any more questions related to this, or for this gentleman? Sure.
Just, Darrell, I'm confused because, what I thought I was going to see tonight was an application seeking conditional use to permit facilities, vehicles, ingress. And what I think I hear the applicant saying is they really want to use this property as commercial property.
It was my question, too.
That really sounds like a rezoning issue rather than a conditional permit.
And that would be another option for them. When I went out to the applicant's property and met with the applicant, that was, the primary concern was the ingress of vehicles because of the narrowness of 2930, the vehicles, it's difficult for them coming and going and to turn around back there, whereas if they come in on 2930, I'm sorry, 2922, and go out on 2930, then it erases that issue. That,
2922 is being used residentially, owned by the applicant.
right.
My reading of his application, there wasn't that limitation on there, whether it belongs here or not. It does say he's applying for conditional use to operate a landscape business. That's what his application says, yes.
Killian? Is
Yes.
that how you say it?
Yes.
Mr. Killian, our job here is to listen to them, but we do not have to, if we decide to do completely opposite what they tell us to do, we have that right. Okay, I want to make that clear. These are just recommendations. Number two, the reason I wanted to know where that property was, if the proper fencing is put up there and it's zoned for that, then it is up to zoning to give you the rules that you have to go for that encompasses that material, that area, in my view. This is just my personal. I'm concerned with the other people around it, okay? Because they, who came first, the chicken or the egg? And this, when you have multiple zoned properties, this is what we get into. But I just wanted to make that clear to you so you knew how we did that. I don't know if that was
Just
pervaded or...
for a frame of reference, could I ask him to put up the pictures? Go to the 2006.
Yeah, this is the 2006.
Oh. Yeah, okay. Can you cancel all the trucks parked in the middle of that? Bring right up there.
Right in here.
Whose property is that?
That is the subject property. Tonight's subject
That's
property.
2922.
But I think, as you said before, because it may have violated code in the past, doesn't mean that reflects on what we do here tonight.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is you're going to clean all that out of there to use...
Those trucks aren't there
That's not
today.
there
They're
now.
not there anymore.
But I'm saying that property is zoned, and that special permit may not have existed. We don't know that,
Okay,
okay?
I got it.
Same thing with the property next door, 2940. That special use might never have been applied for. We're here today to apply. There's your volume of trucks on a residential zoned property.
Right now, nothing is operating on 2940?
No, it's a vacant lot with
Okay.
old
We've been in
trucks,
conversation to
storage
purchase,
containers.
okay?
Well, in regard to, and again, it's not before us, but if you purchased it, I assume on this property, you still want to be able to have the ability to do what you're here for.
I would not change it any more than the use it's been for the last
Right.
20, 30, 50, I don't know how long.
Okay.
But it's my understanding that Atlas had used this property, that the Stansley family had used this property, so it's not any different than its historical use. Okay?
Okay. Any more questions for Mr.?
I have another thing. I want to ask Mr. Nagy something. If this was a rezoning board, hypothetical, and the applicant comes in for an R1, and then in conversation, they are actually asking for an R3, we cannot act on the R3, we can only act on the R1.
You can only act on what they apply for.
And the application says the applicant is seeking a conditional use permit to facilitate vehicle ingress to his landscape operation and on adjoining property. It sounds like we're giving approval for the property to be landscape use. And according to the book, he would have to go through a conditional use permit to change that zoning to a landscape, correct? I mean, are we going to vote on what he's asking for on this piece of paper, or what he's explaining to us?
I think you have to vote on what he's applied for. And he has applied for a landscape business in an A4 zone.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's one thing I wanted to intercede here. Yeah, if you look at his letter of February 5th that says, I'm applying for a conditional use permit for a landscape business, there's nothing specific about, ingress only. So I know what the application says, and, so I don't even think, in my opinion, that we're not amending his request. I think he's requesting what he applied for, but we may have had it a little bit limited on our.
I see.
No, I think you're bringing a very good point, but I think that needs to be, yeah, so I mean, unless I'm missing, I think he's here for what he applied for. Yeah, sure.
So the nine, I mean, if the request is to change the property to a landscape business, then the nine recommendations would certainly fit. Is that not correct?
As you deem appropriate, yes. I mean, some of the recommendations aren't really recommendations, they're a recital of what's required for that type of use.
Yeah, and
It's non-discretionary. It's part of the code, it's what's required for that type of business.
Okay, I got another.
No, go ahead. I know enough.
If we approve, Mr. Chairman, if we approve the driveway for the turnaround, okay? And we said, okay, he could do that. Wouldn't we have to put a stipulation that he'd have to fence that property? I'm sorry?
Good point.
Okay. When we have to make sure we fence that property, even though, just for that driveway, okay? Now, when you go back, and I'm not arguing with you guys, I'm just saying, go back to this gentleman saying, somebody says it's got to be concrete. If it's inside his property on his fence, I guess he could put whatever on that.
Not necessarily.
No, not if he's operating a landscape business, he can't.
Does it say that in the code?
It says driveways shall be hard surface with asphalt or concrete.
Specific to a landscape business or?
Specific to any business.
All right, so let's say he puts a fence up and he puts the driveway in, then you guys could stop him from being zoning, could stop him from having the landscape. Is that correct?
Wait, say that again.
Okay, we're here to approve the driveway, all right?
That's not what his application says.
Well, what's it say?
Now, the application asks for conditional use.
To his landscape operation on adjoining property.
That's the report.
I think his application asks for a conditional use to operate a landscape business.
Period.
Oh,
Period, right?
I didn't see that part.
Yeah, no, I know, but that is what his application says.
All right.
Okay.
All right, I changed it. All right.
All right, anything else?
I think my wife, who
Is there anybody
owns,
else here who would like to speak on this matter?
she owns the 2930 property, the business property. Okay?
Wait, she owns which one?
The business property
Oh,
adjacent to this one.
We have you come to the podium, and sign in, and state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Beth Killian, and I own the property at 2930. My son owns the property at 2922. I think up until this past fall, I guess I just wanted to, I think, maybe clear up just a couple points. Until this last fall, when we purchased these two properties at auction, all three have always been owned together by the same owner, traditionally for the last 60 years. When they sold, all three sold together, and up until just a couple months ago, it's always been kind of a package deal with those three properties. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think maybe the confusion came about in that when we filled out the application for the conditional use permit, that is what we were applying for, conditional use permit to run a landscape business. In our discussions with the gentleman from the zoning department, and I think one of the questions on the application was, what is your intended use? Well, our immediate use was to use it for ingress. And that still is true. That is still our immediate use and what we're looking to do with it. We're not looking to do any kind of retail, none of that. However, what we really are applying for is a conditional use permit. And I guess I just have a question about that. It was my understanding, and I may be wrong, but because it's an A4 zoned property, that means that as an A4, it has the ability to have a conditional use permit for a landscape business.
Correct.
And it should, but that's not a zoning change, is that correct?
This board is the one that would have the authority to grant that, so you don't have to go to another board.
Okay, so I'm not asking to have the zoning changed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I...
Conditional use still stays the same zoning.
Conditional use, okay. And I guess I just wanted to reiterate, which is part of what he said before, that, you know, these two properties have historically been used commercially all along. And we're not looking to do anything different that's never been done before. We just want to be able to do it right and legally. Because I don't know that that's always been the case. As far as all the different conditions that were put on, I know you spoke about, we're discussing this property and we're not talking about anything else. And I understand that. But you know, when you drive through that whole neighborhood, and I consider just those three streets of Hessler, Shetland, and Gradwell are all kind of a neighborhood, in my opinion. You know, it's very obvious when you drive down those streets that there's more than a few of those properties are operating commercially. I don't know if they have conditional use permits, maybe they do. They're all zoned A4. Like you said, there's over 60 of them have gravel driveways. Some are dirt, don't even have gravel at all. You know, Atlas Paving, which is a pretty big company with big trucks, big trailers, heavy equipment. None of their stuff's paved. It's, you know, they have all the gravel lot too. So I just want to make sure that we're not being singled out, you know. Nobody else has to do it, but you do.
No,
that's not my only issue with some of the conditions.
You're here, obviously, doing it, getting the authorization you need to get legally.
Right.
And I think sometimes people tend to think I'm getting punished for that because I'm trying to do it the right way. That's obviously not the case here, but as Mr. Nagy pointed out, if, you know, if it was all zoned and you were just going to operate your landscape business, there would been requirements. And
right.
What I think we are trying to read, there are some things that are in the code that you would have needed to do to operate that kind of a business.
We also, if you may or may not, I don't know, it's a pretty big parcel, the one we're talking about, and we have erected a split rail fence to try to separate and make it clear that, you know, part of it is definitely residential to go with the house, and to have absolute screening for the neighbors on all sides. I mean, we want to be neighborly, we want to be good neighbors, so whatever it takes to do that is fine, but we just don't want to have the conditions be so punitive that we can't operate.
Right.
So, I guess that's really all I had to say.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
No.
Okay. Anybody else here to speak on behalf of this matter? Thank you. Come on up, please. And please state your name and sign in.
I'm Desi Ruiz. We're the neighbors.
South.
South side neighbors.
Okay. Where's that picture?
Which one did you need, Tom?
And I'm Paul Ruiz, and the husband. Thanks for this opportunity to talk. I first came here really just kind of get some information, find out what's going to happen and everything. And unfortunately, I hope this doesn't come across as being like a personal thing. It's more for the property. I want to find out property because from what I found out, this conditional use is associated with the property, and that's what this is about, the property, and that stays with the property permanently, from what I understand. And from our past experience, as far as those properties, I know when we first moved in, which is almost 20 years ago now, the gentleman and wife owned that, and it was just residential. Then after that, one of the Diller family bought that, and they had it for several years. And that was still just a residential home too. And then even the house just north of that was conducted the same way. Metzko, who owned the properties that we're talking about, that he had them all three, I think he's the one initially that bought them as a package as three. You know, and then he never lived there. I think he still lives on her road. But he rented those two properties, and then he had the one. I'm just trying to add a little bit of clarity, maybe some balance, because like I said, I've been there for almost 20 years now. But my concern really was, you know, just as Mr. Killian said, you know, how there had been some zoning violations in the past 10 years. That's why I'm here to find out what's happening here, because I don't want, and that just lends credence to why I'm here, is because I don't want to have all these zoning violations that supposedly like on those other properties. You know, I know the Killians, they seem like good people, and they're planning on having a very respectable business, but we don't know what's going to happen in 3 years from now. You know, the dealers who own the properties down just north, you know, Mr. Diller, they're going to live there forever. He died, you know, now none of the dealers even live on that street. We don't know what's going to happen. We can think, we can plan, you know, for 5 years on the road, things could happen. And my concern is, well, what happens if they leave and we don't know who's going to come in next? What kind of business? You know, so that's where all this is coming from me. It's from the property itself, and if there's a business. You know, this is residential. Our bedroom window, if from that driveway there, that stone driveway, we can hear every single thing that goes through there. You know, especially if it's stone. It's maybe, it's probably 30 feet from that, because our bedroom window is real close. Our living side of the property is on that side. So that's where my concern comes in from. If as we said, a snow plowing business, you know, I've got several friends that are in that. I mean, they have to get out there, I mean, sometimes at 3 in the morning, coming in and out, and if that's stone, you know, and we're trying to sleep, you know, I didn't, until I heard that, I thought, oh, wow, I didn't know that was going to happen. So I just came just to say what's going to happen with this property, but now after all this, my concern level has kind of increased. This is right where you're seeing those pictures there. We're on our property. I'm in my property there, it looks like, yeah. And you can see how close it is to our backyard. Right there, I think we're by the bedroom window, and that you can see that's where the driveway is going through.
Our driveway's just on that side of the trees right there.
Yeah, if you do the overhead view. So, you know, my biggest thing is just really just probably a noise factor. You know, I know they talked about maybe having a privacy fence, but, you know, in section 2216, it talks about open storage and having a landscaping strip, you know, 15 feet wide at least, and a depth, you know, with evergreens. And that's whatever that can bear, you know, be a sound barrier, because like I said, you know, if you're going to have vehicles going in, nobody wants that. I mean, I don't know if anybody, whether you're a business owner or not, if you're sleeping, you don't want to have your sleep disrupted, you know? Not at 3 in the morning, you know, when there's, you know, and when it's quiet, the snow, how everything travels, you know, when it's in the winter, when there's snow on the ground, how the sound really travels even more, you know? So, you know, just hearing that about there are going to be some, that kind of concerns me. Like I said, this just kind of came up after hearing all this. I just wanted to find out what was coming up with what was going to happen here.
Well, the shrubs. If we didn't mention when we had the fence going across there, if this were to pass, if they have the privacy fence going on the parts that aren't privacy at this point, we kind of were wondering if the hedges, or what do you call them, the evergreens, would be an issue if we could get the evergreens too, like he was saying. So that was something you hadn't mentioned when you asked if they were willing to do that.
I think there was section 1 that was in your document, the report.
What, about the privacy fence or the?
About privacy fence along with vegetation, I believe it said.
Right.
something like
Yeah,
that.
that was item 1.
Yeah.
So that's something that would make you feel a little better about the situation.
We've been there for 19 years, and it's been a really quiet area right there. There hasn't been any traffic in that property. There were some cars in that area there, but I didn't really notice them because there was no noise, but there was usually residential people living there, because it was always rented out to somebody, some families. Families always lived in the house, or they were vacant. So there wasn't any kind of traffic going through for the last 19 years since we've been there.
Yeah.
So are you opposing the conditional use to have this A4 property that's where it's zoned now for agricultural, residential, to have the conditional use where it becomes a landscape business with having the trucks and everything going through there? Are you opposing that? Or are you saying it's okay as long as there would be the fence and the landscaping and all of that?
Well, I guess it's like...
And the conditions that we've been talking about.
The conditions you talked about, I thought, you know, I didn't even know that, like I said, I just came just to say, hey, you know, as long as you have a fence there, and maybe if that, you know, there's not stone there, because we can hear that. But then when I heard about, you know, snow plowing, and if you're snow plowing at 3, you know, like I said, you 3 in the morning, if you're going to be coming in and out, that concerns me. So yeah, there has to be some kind of a barrier for the sound. That's all I'm concerned about, is the sound. I'm a business owner myself, and I love seeing how businesses grow, in small business, home business, that's what makes America.
But I don't like the idea of the trucks being on the property because of, they don't have many now, and so when they're back in the corner, we can't see it. But what becomes of it years from now, when somebody else owns it or the place does get really busy, can they have 20 trucks loaded up back there? Because that's, I guess if it's out of our vision from my yard, I guess I'm okay with that, but it is an eyesore when there's a ton of trucks sitting back there not too far away from where we're playing ball in the backyard or driving in our driveway.
Yeah,
It changes it a little bit.
What you're talking about is exactly what the zoning staff recommended in the recommendations.
Exactly.
You do this, it should be, one of the things in the very beginning of the zoning resolution, section 101, the purpose is to protect you when you make a change like this. And you're asking exactly what this paragraph is saying.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how, I know at least for the sound, as far as like the backup alarms, when the trucks are backing up, and then like the dozer that's, I've been around with, I got a friend that's got a excavating business, and I don't know, maybe the muffler is off on that, but that dozer is really loud. I know one of the neighbors back in Colony Oaks was kind of upset, and I don't think they're here, but they had said something about the property and stuff, and that was probably back in the fall, something. They just moved in, and they were concerned, and I don't know what they were kind of complaining to me, and I didn't, yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is that, I guess there are, other people that are concerned, but I don't want to, I'm not opposed to it. I just opposed to the sound, and, that's real. I mean, if there's cars parked in the back there, if they're going to have hedges and the privacy, that doesn't bother me. It's just the sound, and when everybody leaves, if, the business does grow, which would be great, and then, you got 20 guys leaving and cars leaving, and, I know some of the younger kids have those mufflers, and you're hearing this zoom, zoom, zoom down there,
I kind of wonder, I don't know how it would work, how it works, but middle of the night thing kind of does bother me. If there's a way that they can exit that way, if they can set it up so they know ahead of time that the late, middle of the night ones would be able to go out that other exit instead of right by my road. Because once I'm going to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's it. And I got the kids that I got to deal with. So I guess all those things, I mean, we're saying that we like all those things. And I do like the time. I mean, I don't mind even 10 o'clock at night, but middle of the night, I might have a problem with, kind of thing. But I like all the stipulations.
Do you feel if we grant this variance, it'll affect your property values?
That was the other thing that I was going to say, is that I know it will, and that's a concern. I think it's a concern from anybody, whether, like I said again.
It's going to affect, probably the other people too that are behind us as well. But they're not there to speak, because there's some empty lots.
Anything else?
We're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input. Is there anybody else here to speak on this matter? One sec. Go ahead. Did you want to, sir, were you going to say something? Okay, yes, you can come up again.
We have no issues of doing landscaping, doing whatever all that takes. Like I said, we want to be good neighbors for sure. We want to put up whatever screening is necessary. We started down that road, which is how that single lane drive got started. We started down that road of trying to get it cleaned up and be good neighbors and put up the fences and do all that stuff. But when we were first issued, a complaint was first lodged, we stopped because we didn't know where it was going to go. So, we had all kinds of intentions of doing that. We've started to put, a bit of a berm up with some permission to try to block the neighbors, that subdivision on the back, and we can continue doing all that. We're a landscape business, we have no problem putting up landscape screening. The other point I wanted to make was about the winter time and the in and out. I don't know how bothered. Did you have issues this winter? I mean, we were in and out in the middle of the night.
Well, no, but it wasn't stone then. So if it's not stone, if it's, did you?
There wasn't much snow this
There wasn't much.
We probably went out and salted, we have some big accounts, probably 15 times.
Okay.
I mean, was it a problem for you?
No.
Okay. I mean, we try to make a lot of effort, and we tried to make a real point in the winter of going out. I have no
That's all I'm
problem.
saying, is if you went out that
Right.
way in the middle of the night, then.
So we have no problem going in one way and out the other. That doesn't
Maybe
mean
not
it might be
typical
a
winter.
little
Excuse me.
occasion, but-
Supposed to be addressing
Oh,
the
I
comments.
apologize. I'm sorry, here we're having all this, I'm sorry. Yes, we have no problem with going in one way, out another. The last point I just wanted to make is that, just the realization that as far as the sights and sounds in the neighborhood, we're operating on a commercial property right next door. So the sounds aren't going to change, that's still all going to be there. So denying this isn't going to solve that problem that anybody else may have.
Other than there's a buffer.
Because we're operating fine and legally.
But you're asking to really move your operation over another lot.
We're asking to, yeah, well, we're still operating just fine on the commercial property, and we're going to continue to do that. Yes, we would just like to have the availability of space that's on the other lot.
And I think one of the things we've heard here tonight, and hopefully your business will be very successful, but there may become a day with this conditional thing that you say, well, we need both lots for our business. And if, one of the things we have to consider tonight, do we want to allow that?
And the conditional use, if what I understood, the conditional use goes with this property then, so if we would leave, that is still attached to that property?
You mean the landscape?
The board can put stipulations, if you want to put it just for that property owner, I mean, that's.
Just for this
that's
property
your
owner?
discretion.
If the property owner came in and asked for a
Does it carry-
conditional change.
Yeah, that's going to transfer to the next owner regardless.
It
if
runs
you-
with the land.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I think there is a period if the use is interrupted or is it continuous that it would revert back. Is that a clause in your resolution that you're aware of? Where a conditional use has to be continuous?
There's no, it actually doesn't say it, but I know in the past they have put conditions on certain properties and said it stays with the property, so it's pretty much your discretion, because the zoning book does not spell that out.
So the continued use is something we can consider too. So if there's a gap in the use, then it could revert. Okay.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
All right,
Thank
no,
you.
good question, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, we will be, along with the other things we're going to get to tonight, we'll be taking this under consideration, then we will be coming back out to vote on this matter. Should you want to stay tonight, you would hear your decision tonight, and if not, decision will be published eventually on the township website. So, just thought I'd let you know that. And at this point, we'll be moving on to the next item. New business. Variance request to allow a 6-foot-high fence in the front setback for the property located at 3400 King Road by Scott Wendland, property owner. Staff report, please.
Yes, this applicant is seeking a variance from the height requirements for fencing under section 2211B of 3.5 feet in the front setback to 6 feet in order to secure the property. The current zoning is M2, it's a self-serve storage facility, has 195 feet of frontage on King Road and 673 feet on Portman Drive. Lot size is just over 3.8 acres. The adjacent zoning and adjacent use is to the north, M2, cell tower, A4, single-family residential, and M3, heavy industrial storage. To the south is A4, Sylvania Board of Education. To the east is C2, retail, the Meyer store, and C4, office condominiums. To the west is M3, landfill. The applicant is the property owner and business owner of Store and Lock, a self-serve storage facility on King Road. The applicant plans to add 2 additional self-storage buildings on the front of his property between the existing front building and King Road. While the current front setback for an M2 zone property is 40 feet, section 2222, setbacks on major roadways, dictates the required setback from the center line of King Road must be 100 feet. The proposed new front building would be 101 feet from the center line. In front of this building, the applicant would like a 25-foot drive with a 5-foot grass area. This would put the proposed front fence approximately 70 feet from the center of King Road. The applicant seeks this variance in order to place a 6-foot-high security fence on the front of his property. Section 2211B, fencing non-residential of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution, requires a 3.5-foot maximum height limit in the front setback. Staff recommends approval of this request. The erection of a 6-foot fence as opposed to a 3.5-foot fence 70 feet from the center line of King Road would have no adverse impact on the traffic on King Road or to the surrounding, mostly non-residential properties. Additionally, a 6-foot fence is in order to adequately secure the property. Staff further recommends the approval of this variance be contingent on the applicant placing an aesthetically pleasant fence in the front setback so as to minimize any visual impact the increased height may have. A chain link fence and/or barbed wire are not aesthetically acceptable.
So privacy fence again is what the preference would be?
Actually, it would be open fencing, wrought iron.
Open fencing.
I think he's got some photos tonight of what he's proposing,
What kind of fence?
like wrought iron,
No, we don't have any photos.
or extruded.
A solid?
No, probably 6 foot on, or 6 inch on center, the tubing.
She said they might have, is the applicant here? Okay, might as well see what, they have some photos. Please state your name and sign in.
Scott Wendland.
Thank you.
Keep it for we should get a copy.
This is nice.
Which one are we looking at?
I think they're all the same, the big section of that.
Scott, are you going to use the piers too?
Yeah, we'll go over that, we'll just jump right to the piers. What you don't know is this site has no sanitary sewer, so it has a septic field. And I've met with the people from the health department on this particular area, and we probed it. And basically, she recommends, and until we know exactly where those pipes are, that I should look at a fence like this, because it would be more aesthetically pleasing. I would personally like to put up a few piers like that shows, but I don't want to get myself locked into something that I can't do because of a health department violation.
Yeah.
But if you do, and I know how Bob said that this site's different than everybody else's, and we can't look at other sites and so on, but this fence right here would be probably more aesthetically pleasing than most you're gonna see in the area. I think it'll do a lot to dress up the front of that, and then we'll continue down the sides with a chain link, like we already have on the site.
So maybe somebody can help me. So this fence would be along King?
Should I take that?
It would be
Could you do that, Darrell?
right along there.
Okay.
Along the front, then a small portion along the side going towards Myers to tie into the existing fence.
Okay.
So what, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Wendland, what you're saying is that you're drawing there with the piers and that type of look
Yeah.
that you would like to do, but you may have problems with the piers because of the septic tank down there?
Yeah, it's more the field problem. There's
The field.
already an existing, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. The field is in good shape, and, I don't want to have to move the whole field to to construct
Okay,
those
let me ask you one more
piers.
question. You see this picture right here? The main one you're showing me?
Right.
Showing on here? This one? And that would be 6 foot high?
Right.
That style?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, good. I like that. I like the one with the piers too, but I can see where the...
So you, in short, you would like the piers, but if there's, if there's a issue with the leach field, then you don't want to be mandated to put it in.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Anybody else here to speak on behalf of this matter? Not, go into discussion, come out with a decision. Thank you. Okay, our last new business is a conditional use request to permit a small hair salon, one station, in an A4 zoning district for the property located at 2959 Chrysler by Juanita McDaniel, property owner. Staff report, please.
Just 1 second.
Speed reading.
The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit for a home occupation in order to operate a one-station hair salon out of her home. Current zoning is A4, single-family residential, 83 feet of frontage on Heisler Road. Lot size is just over 1 acre. The adjacent zoning and adjacent use is mixed C2 and A4 commercial, road collision to the north. To the south and east is A4, single-family residential. To the west is mixed C2 and A4, commercial Brent Electric. It's kind of to the northwest along Central. The applicant wishes to open a one-station hair salon in a private residence. Hairdresser is specifically called out as a home occupation under Section 2213 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution. Pursuant to Article 25 of the STZR, any home occupation requires a conditional use permit approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The intended hair salon would have one station serving just one customer at a time. The applicant intends to be open 3 or 4 days per week. There will be no structural changes to the dwelling or property, and no additional parking is needed. Traffic would be negligible. The staff recommends approval of this request. This home occupation would be indiscernible to and have no adverse effect upon the surrounding properties. The traffic and parking generated from this use would be no greater than those typically found in a residential area. Staff further recommends that this conditional use be approved on the condition that the home occupation remains a one-station salon only. Should the applicant wish to expand her business beyond the one station, she would need to come back before the BZA for a granting of a new conditional use permit. Furthermore, the applicant is expected to adhere to all requirements pursuant to home occupations as outlined in Section 2213 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution.
Okay. Any questions? Is the applicant here? Please sign in and state your name.
Hi, I'm Juanita McDaniel.
So basically what I'd like to know, have you had a chance to see the code section at 2213? And what I mean by that is if what you're seeking, if it's approved, you won't be advertising in terms of the signage. It says no more than 25% of the dwelling will be, you literally are going to be a single chair?
The room already exists.
Okay.
My husband built it for me when I quit work to raise my kids, so I could cut his hair and my kids. So I've been using it for years, just not for public.
Okay.
Only for my own, so yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have something. You mentioned signage. Does signage allow you to have anything at all in the house?
No.
No, I thought it did, okay. No question.
Anybody else? That's it? Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will be convening to discuss the cases, and we'll be coming back out to vote. So, adjourn. adjourn for a bit.